Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be ranking all of the Ghostfaces from the Scream franchise. So here is your spoiler warning. If you have yet to see Scream 7 or any of these other sequels, then you should definitely just save this to your watch later and come back to it after you have remedied that situation. Whether you end up watching my video or not, I do think that all of the Scream movies are required viewing because they are all a lot of fun. So I do just want to say, first and foremost, that when I was trying to figure out where I was going to put all of these ghost faces in my ranking, I was noticing one common thing, and that was that it is kind of hard for me to understand where they're coming from on their motives and stuff. There are, holes that I can poke in really all of them. And I think it's probably just the fact that I'm not a psychopath, I'm not a sociopath, so it's hard for me to really put myself in their shoes and um, see how they're doing these things that they are. But when it came to me putting these ghost faces in their spots in here, I just didn't really take the motive into account too much. I mean, sometimes I might a little bit, especially if it's one that is really bad or really good out of them. But for the most part, what I was looking at more would be their characters overall and the way that the actors portrayed them in here. I think that that is some important stuff, plus all the things that they actually get to do or achieve as Ghostfaces. So I did go ahead and put all 17 Ghostfaces in this list. I can't believe there are that many. And I know there's one specific one that a lot of people wouldn't even bother putting in here, but I didn't feel right doing that. So in my number 17 spot, I do have Craig from Scream 6. And I think that he is an obvious one to put in the bottom because of the fact that he is never alive on screen at all. Not really much I can say about him beyond that. So in my number 16 spot, then I do have Carl from Scream 7. And very similarly to Greg, he is just not given really anything to do in here. And unless I missed it or anything, I don't think he even had any line of dialogue at all. So I think that the thing that will be the most memorable about Carl will be the fact that he got ran down by Gail in her car. And that part was really funny. But I don't know that that is what you want to be remembered for as a Ghostface. So in my number 15 spot, I do have Ethan from Scream 6. And I think that out of the three main killers in Scream 6, he is easily the most bland out of them. Even just as Ethan, he was a really bland character, and he doesn't really have much added to him by being a ghost face or anything. It's just not a well-written character, and maybe if he had had more to do in here, then he might have made it a little bit higher on the list. But coming in at my number 14 spot, I do have Marco from Scream 7. And much like Ethan, I think that he is also pretty bland in here. However, I did go ahead and put him a little bit higher just for the sense that he does have that knowledge of AI and being able to do the deep fakes. That way they can throw everyone off their scent and make it seem like Stu is the one that is behind the mask again. But there's still not a lot going on with Marco here, so I can't justify putting him any higher on the list. So in my number 13 spot, I do have Jessica from Scream 7. So I was kind of thinking about all the ghost faces and what categories they all kind of fall into. And I think that there are masterminds, there are the unhinged ones, and then there are the lackeys. And I do think that sometimes, depending on how many killers you have, especially, some of them could take on multiple of these roles. And I do think that Jessica is the mastermind, and she is also very unhinged. When it comes to Anna Camp and her portrayal in here, I actually really like it quite a bit. I really think that it is not a stretch for her to be unhinged in here, because I think even just in Pitch Perfect, she was very unhinged. So it did make total sense to me when it ended up being her as one of the ghost faces. However, I do think that her motive is just really weird and confusing because, when I was leaving the theater after it was over and I was starting to gather my thoughts on the film, I was wondering, I'm like, what even was the motive? So I did end up looking up a synopsis for the movie. That way I could just go back and check. And it was exactly what I thought that it was, but it just was very confusing and strange. But I do have to give her a little bit of credit for a couple different things. First and foremost, I do like the fact that she was able to take down her abuser. That is, a consideration that I had in here. And also, she is a very heartless ghost face when it comes down to it, due to the fact that she did take out her own son since he looked like her abuser. But I just think that, if she had been put in a movie that had a better script and stuff, she could have, potentially made it higher on this list. And now in my number 12 spot, I do have Jason from Scream 6. I think that he is a very unique ghost face when it comes down to it, due to the fact that he was unmasked immediately following that first kill in the film. And I think that had he survived longer in the film, it would have actually been probably a little bit better than what we got in Scream 6, as far as the reveal goes and stuff. Because we would actually get something a little bit different, where we would get to follow a ghost face from the beginning point in the film throughout it, and just see, how that makes it different for the experience of watching Scream 6. But I do think that what I really like about Jason in here for the short time that we have him, it would be when he has his own Ghostface call with the true Ghostface of the film. And I think it's just very interesting hearing him talk about what it was like to kill Samara Weaving's character. We haven't really gotten to have that insight, I guess, yet. And it was just very creepy, and I enjoyed that part of it. So now in my number 11 spot, I do have Quinn from Scream 6. Out of the three main killers in Scream 6, she is definitely the unhinged one of them. And I really like the actress that plays her, so I was bound to like her in this one as well. And I really like her just as Quinn. I think that she is an interesting character. And then when you actually get to see her as Ghostface, especially like when she has her teeth knocked out and stuff, she is just very creepy. And I like her in here. But then again, there's still not a whole lot to do when it comes down to it. I didn't really be that suspicious of her due to the fact that she was seemingly dead partway through the film. However, I think also when you see that her dad is one of the ghost faces, then it does pose the question, maybe that was faked and maybe she is the last one under the mask. But now in my number 10 spot, I do have Charlie from Scream 4. And I know that he is one that people have put very low on their rankings before, but I don't feel that way about him, especially now that we have gotten as many more sequels as we have. There are a lot more that are more bottom of the barrel than him, for sure. And unfortunately, he does fall into that lackey category when it comes to, his role as Ghostface in Scream 4. I do think that he is actually a really brutal Ghostface, and he was more than likely the one that killed a lot more of the people in Scream 4 than Jill. And I do just think that he is a little bit underrated when it comes down to it. So in my number 9 spot, I have Richie from Scream 5. And when I was doing my video for Scream 5, I was kind of noticing that there wasn't like a huge difference between how I felt about Richie and Amber in here. And obviously I did end up choosing her as being just a little bit better than him. However, I really do like Jack Quaid in here. I think that he does a great job in the role, and he is just very creepy. But he's also very charismatic throughout the film, and I like that he is kind of following in his father's footsteps, because I have seen his dad as a villain in multiple different things before, so I like getting to see that for Jack Quaid as well. However, I do think that his motive is, very wild and stuff, and not necessarily a good reason to be going after a bunch of people. But in my number 8 spot, I do have Amber from Scream 5. And I think that she is definitely the more unhinged of the pair in Scream 5. And I do typically end up liking the more unhinged one just a little bit more. I think it's a little bit scarier when they don't have all that much of a motive and they're just doing it for fun. And it definitely seems like Amber is having a lot of fun throughout the course of Scream 5. I think especially when she is making that noise, like she is stabbing somebody, toward the end of the film. I think that is just really creepy, and I like seeing her do that. I also have to give her credit for the fact that she did take out an OG character in Dewey, and it does, break my heart, but I do have to give her credit for that as well. So in my number 7 spot, I do have Nancy from Scream 2. Now, I have never been a huge fan of the reveal in this film, and I think what I said in one of my other videos is definitely true here. When it comes down to it, a lot of people don't like the reveal in Scream 6 because they think that Dermot Mulroney's performance in there is like too hammy and stuff. But that's how I feel about Laurie Metcalf and her performance as Nancy in Scream 2. And I think another part that just really makes me not like her as much as some of the other ones would be the fact that I think it is kind of ridiculous that, her husband cheated on her and then she decided to abandon her son. Granted, her son is very close to being an adult at that point, but still, that is not something I would ever choose to do if I was also in that situation. So it does just bother me that, she abandoned him and then decides that after everything goes badly for him, that's the point that she's going to go on her own rampage and stuff. I just never understood that and stuff. But I do still think that, she is a pretty decent Ghostface, and she also did get to take out an OG character with Randy, unfortunately, again, because I love him. But now, in my number 6 spot, I did go with Detective Bailey from Scream 6. And I did put him and Nancy close to each other because they do have essentially, the same motive going on here. But I do have to err on the side of preferring him, not just for Dermot Mulroney's performance being a little better, in my opinion, but also just the fact that he didn't abandon Richie, and that wasn't, the reason why Richie went on his rampage and stuff. So as, a father, I think he does a little bit better than Nancy did as a mother there. And I also just have to give him a little credit for the fact that I think that he is such a brutal Ghostface. I do think that more of the killings in that movie were done by him. And I think that, that's more represented by the fact that he was the one wearing Billy's mask throughout. And he is just super brutal and just very scary presence in Scream 6. And I like that. So now we are going into the top 5. So a round of applause for all of these Ghostfaces that are left here on the top part of my list for being the best of the best. So in my number 5 spot, I do have Mickey from Scream 2. I have always liked Mickey quite a bit. I think that Timothy Olyphant does such a good job in this role. He is super creepy throughout the whole movie, even when you don't know he's Ghostface. So it is a little bit obvious that he might be one of them, just with his personality being a little bit quirky like that. But I love how much he loves the movies as well. And he is just very unhinged, which I always end up liking. And I also have to just point out that when it comes to his motive and wanting to see how it goes in court and try to blame the movies and stuff, I genuinely want to see what would happen if he actually had done that. I think it would be just interesting to see like a little offshoot scene for that. I have always been interested in that. But now we can go on to my number 4 pick, and I went with Billy from Scream. So, as I've said, most of the time I do end up preferring the more unhinged one over the mastermind, and that is the case with Scream as well. Now, with Billy, I do think that Skeet Ulrich does a fantastic job in this role. He is very creepy throughout the film as well, not quite to the level that Mickey is in Scream 2. So you do have like a little bit less suspicion on him. But I do think that he is really cool in here, and he is, technically the original mastermind, which is awesome as well. But very similarly to the fact that, I have some issues with his mom and like her motivations and stuff, I do with him as well, because it is very strange energy with the fact that, his mom abandoned him, even though he is very close to being an adult. It's not like he's a little kid that is without his mom or anything like that. I do just think that is a little bit strange, and that's probably why I don't put him any higher on the list than this. But now in my number 3 spot, I do have Roman from Scream 3. So, as far as Roman goes, I think that we have to give him credit just in the sense that he is the only one to ever do this on his own. And I can't imagine how much harder that would be. It would be unbelievable to have to do everything that he did in order to be that single Ghostface in the movie. And I do think that his story is heartbreaking, and I do really feel for him. And when it comes down to it, they obviously did make it canon that he was the one who orchestrated everything before the events of the original Scream. So if it was not for him, we would not have any of this going on. And I do have to give a shout out to him for the fact that he did take out technically another OG character with Cotton Weary. Now, in my number 2 spot, I have Stu from Scream. And Stu is the one that I definitely liked more out of the two in the original Scream. I think that, it's cool that he's the original unhinged one. His motive is basically just peer pressure, and it just seems like he is having so much fun throughout the course of the film. I think Matthew Lillard did a fantastic job portraying him, and, whether it be that there are, ghost faces running down the hall, he's just, eating that up, and he likes going into detail about how to gut people. And honestly, the reaction that he has when Randy asks if he thought that Sydney would go out with him, that just shows like how much fun he's having. I honestly would put that laugh that he does in that scene as my text tone on my phone because I love it that much. It's so silly. But I do think that he is very scary with the fact that he is just kind of doing it for fun, and there's not a lot in it for him beyond just helping Billy out and stuff. But I just really love Matthew Lillard in this performance. I can't get over that enough. And now in my number 1 spot, I do have Jill from Scream 4. So I know that a lot of people don't really respect Scream 4 very much, but I am definitely not that type of person. I really love Scream 4 so much, and mostly that is because of Jill. So I think that she is super awesome in this role. I know that, she is the mastermind, and that's not typically who I prefer when it comes to the Scream villains and stuff. But I think that you have to give her credit in the sense that she almost got away with it. And she would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those meddling rewrites. And I think that, had they done the original intended ending for this, where she would have survived into the next film, that would have been so much stronger and so much better, and I would have loved to have seen that. I think that Emma Roberts is a fantastic actress, and she was very believable in this role. And, I think that it is worth noting that she was willing to take out her own mother, which, is terrible, but it is something to consider here. She is, also very heartless, and she's also not afraid to absolutely hurt herself when she is throwing herself all around Kirby's house. So I think all of that stuff is, a contributing factor as to why I just like her so much. I think she is so cool, and I really wish that she could have survived into Scream 5. But I want to know your thoughts on my Ghostface ranking down below, and also leave me yours. And just remember, we don't have to agree on our rankings here. It's just fun to see those differences in opinion, especially with 17. If you actually put all 17 of them in there are, very few lists that are going to be identical, I think. But if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it and consider subscribing if you haven't yet for more horror content. I do post 2 new videos each week. You can follow me on Instagram for updates on my channel, as well as additional horror content. You can also follow me on Letterboxd to see what I have been watching lately and my brief thoughts on any of those films. If you want either of those, they are linked in my channel description for easy access for you guys. I want to say thank you to everyone who has been supporting my channel so far. It doesn't go unnoticed. My name is Devin. This is Carpenter Hill. Thanks for watching.